Synagogues, the venues of Jewish religious and community life, are outstanding parts of the architectural heritage of multinational cities in the Carpathian Basin. One could state unequivocally that these houses of prayer, hidden either in our city centers or in the suburbs, are among the undiscovered treasures of Hungary. Our guide is Rudolf Klein, an architectural historian, professor at St. István University, doctor of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, and visiting scholar at several universities around the world. In the first two episodes, we presented Jewish architectural heritage from the Roman province of Pannonia and the medieval kingdom of Hungary, as well as discussed the era of Enlightenment and the Jewish emancipation.
In the second half of the 19th century, railway network was being constructed in Hungary, and Papa as a city was offered the opportunity to have the railways cross the city, but they refused. Apparently they were afraid of losing the quietude of the Baroque city, its feudal flair, and therefore the city didn't develop as other cities in the region.
Papa is a famous school town. Among others, Sándor Petőfi, the great 19th century poet, and Maurice Jókai, the best-known romantic novelist, attended the Calvinist college here.
Jews gradually left the city, and the synagogue, which is too large for its neighborhood, remained over there, surrounded by little houses. Very often, Jews calculate that if they build a bit further from the center would extend. But in Papa, it didn't extend.
The synagogue in Papa, built in 1846, is a remarkable exception among Hungarian synagogues, both in its style and interior space. Its appearance is reminiscent of the Florentine Trecento Quattrocento, while its interior is inspired by Byzantine space. Neo-Renaissance was generally rejected by Orthodox Jews because of the style's Roman pagan inspiration. Originally, the bema was in the center of the slightly elongated interior, but later it was placed to the eastern side to comply with the changing liturgy. The synagogue has cultural historical significance as well, since Leopold Löw, the leading figure on Jewish ritual reform, preached his first Hungarian sermons here. Löw urged Jewish assimilation and introduced Hungarian language into the synagogue service. During the War of Independence in 1848, Löw accompanied the national troops' Jewish soldiers into battle. He spent his last years in Szeged as chief rabbi of the congregation.
We are in Temesvar, just at the perimeter of the historic city. Temesvar was first mentioned in 1266 as a bulwark of the Hungarian kingdom and fell to the Muslim rule in the 16th century as other parts of Hungary. However, the Turks stayed here longer. The occupation lasted 200 years. Nevertheless, for the lag, Temesvar made up quite quickly. It became part of the military buffer zone, and soon after that, it became an industrial hub of the southeastern part of historic Hungary.
By 1857, the railway between Szeged and Timisoara had been constructed. What's more, Timisoara was the first city to receive gas street lighting. The Neolog synagogue is located adjacent to the Franciscan monastery in a narrow street in the city center.
The first documented Jew of Timisoara is Assa el-Azriel, who was buried 1636, apparently a Sephardic Jew who lived here under the Turkish rule. A long time has passed until the big breakthrough of the Jews of Timisoara, namely 1862, when they started constructing this Moorish-style synagogue.
The centrally structured Oriental-style synagogue with an eastern arch was designed by Ignaz Schumann, a Viennese architect, The one-time congregation of 13,000 Jews had disappeared by 1985, and the synagogue was closed down. Since 2001, the building has been rented by the local Philharmonic Society, with the yet unaccomplished aim of refurbishing it.
This synagogue has been consecrated twice. First, in 1865, when the building was finished. Second times, when the Emperor Francis Joseph came to the city and wanted to have a festivity together with the Jews. It was the second consecration of the building.
The construction of the synagogue cost 100,000 Austrian forints and was made possible by contributions of the Ashkenazi community. During the heyday of the community, 5 synagogues were built in the city. Before World War I, 1/5 of the town's population was Jewish. As a result of persecution and communism, today there are only around 600 people who consider themselves Jewish. Since its liberation from Islamic rule, Timisoara has been a multinational and multi-religious city. The Catholic Cathedral in the Old Main Square is the last significant work by renowned Viennese architect Joseph Emanuel Fischer von Erlach. Outside the medieval city wall, the Romanian Orthodox Cathedral signals the variegated religious life of the city. The increasing Jewish population of Győr, a city in the north of the country on the Raba River, decided to build a synagogue in 1866.
The best what could happen in the abandoned synagogue is to become a music academy. This is a beautiful concert hall, and on the galleries is the famous Vasilescu collection, a collection of modern art of some predominantly Jewish artists from the 20s until the late 70s.
The synagogue in Győr started a new chapter in the history of Hungarian synagogues. Although it was built in a suburb, its dome is a dominant element of the cityscape, indicating the Jews' firm position in the city. The octagonal floor plan of the dome's central space mingles qualities of medieval Christian architecture with the Jewish ritual space. Similar to the Dohan Street Synagogue, there are 2 women's galleries inside. However, while the interior of the Dohan Street Synagogue reflects the structure of Protestant churches, here we find a new construction with a second-floor gallery running uninterrupted above the ark. The eastern bima of the Neolog Synagogue is located in front of the ark. Tokaj already had a large Jewish population in the middle of the 18th century. The mobile Jews rented pubs and inns from the landlords. Around 1840, they built their synagogue, which was destroyed by fire in 1890. After this, the still-standing synagogue was built from money raised to reconstruct the city.
This building was not always a concert hall. This is the second synagogue in the city of Tokaj, in the wine-growing area. This synagogue belongs to the palace-type synagogues, meaning that it has a big facade with a center projection that addresses the street, and from this facade a relatively narrow nave grows out, ending in the Aron HaKodesh. This synagogue was constructed in 1896, and it was populated with Jews until the Holocaust. After the Holocaust, it fell to decay, and the building was rescued some 10 years ago and converted to a concert hall and theater.
Hust was also a significant Jewish center in the eastern part of Hungary. Its castle was built by King Ladislaus I in 1090 to strengthen the security of his kingdom's eastern borders and defend the country against the Cumans. Uniquely in Hust, twin synagogues were built, of which today only one exists. The newly refurbished Burger House-type synagogue looks to the street behind a transparent fence. Its long gable roof is at a right angle with the facade. Although the building, with its thin walls and large windows, was probably erected in the middle of the 19th century, its four-column interior is reminiscent of the Baroque era and reflects the conservatism of the community. The nine-bay structure, seemingly plastered stone, was actually made of wood, so the building is a kind of imitation. This fact also makes this synagogue unique in the territory of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The interior painting mingles the tastes of the 19th century and the Soviet era. The modern fabric quarter of Timisoara, built outside the city walls, consists of freestyle and Art Nouveau palaces. The synagogue, with its mighty central tin-covered dome and two turrets by the western entrance, is also attuned to the architectural context of freestyle. Its composition of volumes and architecture make the synagogue similar to the one in Szeged.
We are in the ruined synagogue of Timisoara, Fabrik, the industrial city. The architect of this synagogue was Leopold Baumhorn, the most prolific synagogue architect of the region. The Jewish inhabitants of the area were basically Hungarian Neolog Jews. The synagogue is arranged according to the requirements of the Reform sermon with an Eastern bima.
The Fabric Synagogue was built on the site of an older synagogue in Moorish revival style, with some elements of eclecticism. The monumental and richly ornamented building was erected in 1899.
The synagogue belongs to the Byzantine church type synagogue, which means that it has a strong central dome and four or two towers flanking the main entrance or the eastern facade.
On the upper floor, a colonnade separates the gallery from the two-level high men's space, which is covered by an octagonal central dome. The aisles are lit through neo-Gothic windows, which were characteristic elements of Leopold Baumhorn's architecture. The building was visited by wealthy and assimilated Jews, while the other suburban Timisoara synagogue in Josephine was attended by poorer and more Orthodox Jews. The small scale of the interior indicates a close-knit and exclusive community which remained loyal to its long traditions.
We are in the courtyard of the Orthodox synagogue in Timisoara's suburb, Josephstown, where these relatively poor Jews used to live. The synagogue's eastern facade looks to the street and the entrance faces the courtyard. The synagogue has a strict central arrangement with a strong mechitza dividing women's gallery from the men's space.
The Orthodox synagogue in Josephine is the only still functioning synagogue where the believers regularly come together to pray. Timisoara's Jewish community, numbering 600 people, attends this synagogue. Just like Timisoara, Subotica is a multinational and multi-religious city. The triumph of Art Nouveau began with a synagogue, which was followed by several public buildings. The new town hall, the headquarters of the insurance company, the bank, the hotel, and several palaces were all designed in the same style. The Jewish community, once numbering 5,000 people, has only 220 members today. The monumental synagogue, with a capacity of 1,200 seats, is oversized for them. Its exterior is in relatively good condition, but entering the building, one may sense that the synagogue has not been in regular use for more than 50 years.
This is the first synagogue which departs from the traditional setting of using Gentile or Christian styles, using the style of a Christian basilica. The architects departed on a new formal language, using a new structure, a self-supporting shell structure, which has a mesh and which is reinforced from the backside by ribs that enable them to abandon the traditional shape of pendentives and the traditional shape of the drum. So it is an organic shape which on the one hand reflects Polish timber synagogues, on the other hand it carries Hungarian folklore elements.
The dome is borne by 4 steel pillars coated with plaster reliefs. There are no eclectic capitals or vaults. The free architectural structures remind us of a tent in the desert. At the same time, the influence of domes from Polish wooden synagogues can also be traced.
Art Nouveau was not the intended style at the beginning. This was a style, particularly its Hungarian version, that was not welcomed by the Jewish establishment of the country because it was too populistic, it was too Hungarian, it was too avant-gardistic for the establishment. Nevertheless, the architects wanted it. As being pupils of Ödön Lechner, they were really the partisans of the new architectural idiom. So the building activities started in the eclectical style, and during the process they submitted a new version to the Assembly of the Jewish Community, suggesting that the Art Nouveau version would cost much less.
The synagogue represented a great achievement of the local Jewish community, and indirectly the whole city. The very impressive inauguration ceremony was attended by all the celebrities and confessional leaders of Subotica. Chief Rabbi Mor Kutna lit the eternal light. Organ and choir music made the event more festive. The rabbi thanked God for that wonderful day.
We are in the synagogue of Zalaegerszeg, built 1904, designed by Josef Stein and erected according to the template of Catholic Church. On the western side it has 2 towers as a Catholic church, which has a plan of a rectangle, and afterwards it has an octagonal plan, similarly to the synagogue in the Dohány Street in Budapest. And these towers end up in onion-shaped spires.
The exterior of the synagogue, with its Romanesque revival and eclectic style and volumes, does not really differ from that of a Catholic church.
The interior follows period synagogue arrangement with a wide nave, relatively narrow aisles running around the center part, focusing on the ark, which doesn't exist anymore. The building is a cultural center. Instead of the ark, there is a mighty organ, but it lets the typical Eastern window dominate the interior.
Today, the synagogue building functions as a concert hall and art gallery. By the 1830s, the number of Jews moving to the city had significantly grown, and the community built the Neolog Synagogue in 1904. The synagogue in Vats is one of the most significant architectural monuments from the flourishing era of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Jerusalem Temple-style synagogue imitates the Tempelgasse synagogue in Vienna. Men entered the building through an entrance at the center of the main facade, while the women's entrance was on the side facades. The synagogue was not damaged in World War II, but after the war, it passed into the ownership of the city council and started to decay. When it was repurchased by the Jewish community at the beginning of the 1990s, it was about to collapse. The basilica-like nave of the restored synagogue is closed by the ark on the eastern side. The characteristic rose window above the ark looks towards Jerusalem. In the age of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, new Jewish cemeteries were established in the capital city. Architecturally and historically, the most important is the Jewish cemetery on Salgótarjány Road, adjacent to the National Graveyard on Fiumei Road.
The second half of the 19th century is the period of big changes in the Habsburg Empire. The Austrians are pressed to make a compromise with the Hungarians in 1867, which meant that the Hungarian kingdom got partial independence also in financial terms. Due to these fortunate circumstances, Pest, Buda and Óbuda got united, and for that sake the cemeteries had to be replaced. A metropolitan city needs clear traffic, clear lines, and this is the reason that this cemetery came into being in 1878, just 5 years after the unification of the three cities.
The funeral monuments, designed by Béla Lajta, are certainly the most significant works of art in the Jewish cemeteries of Budapest. The Schmiedl family's grave was made of blue Zsolnay ceramic in 1904. Tombstones from earlier Budapest Jewish cemeteries, which stood in the way of urban development, were relocated to the cemetery on Salgótarjány Road.
The Salgótarjány street cemetery has a good chance to become World Heritage, UNESCO World Heritage, due to its significance in terms of architectural art history and in terms of cultural history. The most important developers of the Hungarian Gründerzeit are buried here.
Until his death in 1920, Béla Lajta designed more than 40 funeral monuments, almost all of which can be found in the cemeteries on Salgótarjány Road and Kozma Street in Budapest.
One of the most prominent personalities was Vilmos Freund, my colleague, the architect, who was one of the builders of the Andrássy Avenue, the most important thoroughfare in the modern city of Pest. The Hatvany Deutsch family was very prominent, not only in economic terms, they owned a sugar factory, but mainly in terms of Hungarian literature. Baron Lajos Hatvany Deutsch, born in 1880, graduated in 1907 at the University of Budapest, and in 1908 he founded the groundbreaking journal of Nyugat, meaning West, which was the most avant-gardistic literary journal of Hungary.
The white marble crypt of the Hatvany Deutsch family, with its pedantic Greek Doric classicism, is an iconic memorial in the cemetery. Intriguingly, one finds not a single Jewish symbol on the main facade. The tomb represents universal humanism without emphasizing religious identity.
Baron Manfred Weiss was the most important industrialist in the country. He started his industries producing canned food, and soon he turned to produce ammunition and weaponry. He was a supplier not only of Austria-Hungary, but Russia, Serbia, Bulgaria. Before World War I, he had 5,000 employees. During the war, it soared to 30,000. And in the wake of World War II, there were 40,000 employees of the Weiss Manfred factory.
In 1895, the Hungarian parliament listed the Israelite religion as an accepted and official religion in Hungary. Jews were not a national minority anymore, but a community of Hungarians practicing Jewish faith. Jewish industrialists had a decisive role in the prosperous society of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Still, the Versailles Treaty, the peace agreement ending World War I, had an adverse effect on the Jewish population as well. The number of Jews remaining inside post-World War I Hungary fell dramatically. Their family and economic relations were cut off by the new borders. In the fourth and final episode of our series, we will discuss major changes that arose in the 20th century.